Welcome to the Black Roots of British History, the podcast where we explore the rich and diverse history of Black people through the ages. You feel like me, you know the passion for history, grab a shovel and join us as we dig deep into the foundations of Black British history. If someone was to ask me, what's your earliest memory of Black British style? I'd probably have to say it's probably even before I was born. I was even told a story about when my mum's water broke. She was at home and she was sweeping. Shout out to Impact for telling me this story. And what always stood out about this story, apart from the fact that that was the day I was born, was the fact that before she didn't even get, oh my God, flustered. She stopped sweeping. And rather than, I would probably put on some jogging bottoms and dash out the house, whatever. But what my mum wore was a pair of supposedly these red high heels. It's the 80s, so you can imagine the 80s style, right? So red high heels and her coat, her fur coat. So you get the point. My mum wanted to meet me in style. To this day, I would definitely say my mum is the anchor of my fashion inspiration, or my style inspiration, And then, going on to when I was, and still now, with my nan, in my nan's house, and I've got the picture in my house. There's a picture of her looking like some African queen, a beauty imagine African queen beauty competition. She's got her leopard skin. She's got a crown on her head. If you follow me on TikTok, you'll see these pictures. She is in leopard print, my G. Leopard print from top to toe with a scepter. Queen Elizabeth, Queen Victoria, Queen of Sheba, ain't got nothing on that picture. And I remember, another side note, every time I stayed at my nan's, she had this kimono, right? It wasn't a kimono, sorry. It was like a black Chinese style dressing gown, and I didn't want anything else for my nan when she passed, but all I wanted was that kimono. Now my nan was about 5'9". I'm 5'5", so I don't know how I was going to wear that, but that's something I always wanted. My nan, and similar with my mum, and my mum and my nan weren't related. Accessories. My nan had beautiful jewelry. My mum has an Aladdin's cave of accessories and jewelry. So every time I need something, I go to my mum. And every time she buys me something for Christmas or birthdays, I always get decked out. It's not about no 500 carat gold. It's unique pieces. My mum has always given me really unique pieces, whether it's a bag, clothes, whatever it is. Anyway, and then I think about my cousin, shout out to Rhonda. And listen, Rhonda was like, even if she weren't going out raving, Rhonda would always have the best fashion. She was doing dishes. She was doing dishes, and she looked like a dancehall queen while she did the dishes. And even again now, every time I want some fashion advice, I go, "Hey, Rhonda, what do you think of this?" And what's crazy now is that something that I wear, she wants to borrow. Shout out to Rhonda, because I know you still do. I know you listen to this. And then I think about my own, my own fashion journey, my own style journey, and I think about me and my best friends when we used to go out raving, Soul Deep, Aztec, we're all over the place, yeah. But I look at some of the stuff we used to wear at 14. Sorry, Mum. Yes, I used to go raving at 14 and 12 and shit. But that's neither here nor there. But what was looked at my friend Kemi, shout out to Kemi, because she has all the bones. She has all the pictures of us looking what I will probably look at now as a hot mess. We went to lingerie theme parties and we're wearing some, oh my God, there's one thing I was wearing. Oh, just think about it now. But there's something that we used to wear, I think, and I'm shudder what we used to wear. I shudder what we used to wear. But we thought we were the shit. Listen, we thought we were the shit. And you know what? We still are. Shout out to my best friends, Kemi, Kashana, Lavon. We're still the shit. So anyway, 30 odd plus years deep, we're still going strong. I initially titled this podcast Black British Fashion, but I think it's more appropriate that it's a history of our style, of Black British style. And I'm going to give you a quote from Gore Vidal, and he stated, "Style is knowing who you are, what you want to say, and not giving a damn." And when I think about, this is my own opinion, when I think about Black British style, well, Black style, our style is defined by our culture. It says about who we are. It says about what we want to say, and it's not giving a damn. Our clothes are bold. They are bright. You can't put us. We're not wallflowers. We're just not sitting in the grey. Our style, if I was to think about it in terms of our history, listen, the first part is starting at a particular place. I really want to talk about Black history and style. I need to go further, but I need to go back to the beginning of time, and that'll be a long podcast. But if I was to think about the story of Black British style, I think the most appropriate place would be to start at Windrush. So thinking about, to do my research, the passengers were advised to wear clothes that would be appropriate for the cold, grey climate. Of their Majesty homeland, the Queen's home at the time. So, think about, was it Queen Elizabeth? Yeah, Queen Elizabeth. One of them anyway. And as it was, Her Majesty's homeland, all on board were made sure to wear their Sunday best. It was like they were coming to, like, they thought that the Queen was probably going to be there at the port, waiting for them, waving, and rolling out the red carpet. If I look at the statistics, so I'm going to range some numbers now. Out of the 1,027 passengers who arrived in 1948, there were 34 tailors, there were 10 shoemakers, there was 2 hairdressers, there was 1 hat designer, or hatters, I don't know what it is, and 1 designer, and there was also 11 dressmakers. So that's about a total of about 59 people, which made up about 5% of the total population. Obviously, there were other people that had other professions, cooks, nurses, teachers, etc. But I'm just trying to focus on the ones that are particularly related to this story. So I have no doubt that their suitcases were full to the brim of tailored suits, of fancy dresses, of ribbons for the little girls, and nice breeches and braces for the little boy, and their shorts and their little cute bow tie, and you have the women with their bonnets and looking like they're going to prom, and jewellery that would probably put the crown jewels to shame. So it's unfortunate that all the pictures that we have are in black and white, because it doesn't do it any justice. It didn't do it any justice. But I can imagine all the colours of all the flags in the Caribbean, all the flora and the fauna is all packed in these suitcases, from Jamaica to Mexico, Trinidad, Grenada, St. Kitts. Basically, everybody that was on that boat came with their colours. They shoved and shoved. They're like little duvet. They had all their colours, yeah? If you know duvet, yeah, but I'm not going to go into that. Anyway, and I think it was definitely needed to brighten up the normally grey and wet English weather. But being very aware that as much as they were probably excited about their new opportunities coming to Her Majesty, the mother, Her Majesty's Britain, the epicenter of the British Empire, and thinking about all the futures that they're going to have, and how excited they were about all the opportunities, it was definitely, probably the whites weren't definitely going to be rolling out the red carpet and waiting, and their British flags out going, "Welcome, brothers and sisters, welcome into the bosom of the British Empire." I would probably say it was more like, it's definitely going to be Rivers of Blood. That's the only red carpet that's the only thing that's close to red carpet was Rivers of Blood by Enoch Powell. Again, go do your research on that man. There was no invitation to, from the Queen, "Oh, come, sit down, have a cup of tea." No. Remember, this is the time where there was signs on pubs which blatantly said, "No blacks, no Irish, no dogs." And so because we were sort of, our grandparents were told, oh, you must wear to be appropriate for the cold weather and blah, blah, blah. And we were all, and again, it's this indoctrination, how can I put, colonialization is probably the better word that we've had. Because remember, this is 1948. A lot of countries haven't had their independence yet. So we sort of emulated, or we wanted to fit in. And because there was this overpowering wanting to fit in, to be accepted, that overshadowed our love to stand out. Our love to stand out was actually muted. So just so that the natives could keep calm and carry on. We didn't have bright. I'm like, oh, look at the bright colours. No, we wanted to make sure that we stood out, that we didn't stand out, actually. But again, looking at some of the pictures of my family, in the in the 40s, 50s, they made sure that even though the colours were muted, even though we didn't want to stand out, we made sure that when we were around our people, whether it was parties, whether it was church, we made sure that once we clocked off at work, we took off that disguise when we got home, and we made sure we got to business. There's a saying, when you stand out, step out and stand out. We made sure the men suited and booted, the women looking good, going to parties, meeting their future husband, meeting people. That was a time when we really did show ourselves. However, again, as I said, it was still muted because our grandparents were so indoctrinated, and they really wanted us to, stand at the time. So in the 60s, so like 40s, 50s, my dad wasn't born until the 60s. So again, I had people born in the 50s that come over, and you don't want to cause a scene, because again, this is the time of Enoch Powell. This is the time of where, well, let's face it, Winston Churchill didn't really like us. This was the height of colonialism. We were subjects, but we weren't equal subjects. We weren't even second class citizens, and we were third class citizens. We didn't have that right. We didn't have that. This is, again, if you think about across the pond in the US, this was in a time of civil rights movement. This is 1948. This is post-war Britain. They needed us because they needed to build their country, but they didn't need us to sort of stand out, because if we stand out, we will be seen, we will be noticed, we will be our focus. Remember, when I start to think about it, we were like, again, indentured servants / slaves. You don't want the help to be standing out. The service's background is back office. We didn't want to stand out. Even think about the hair, it was, and also, again, if you're thinking about the influences of America, again, America was like the perm, and you wanted the big hair and, all that style. So there was influence from the Americas. I'm not going to really say it was just that, but, going from the hair, it was zoot suits, it was jazz. But so in a way, the whole jazz movement helped us get our influence. So we kind of got the influence from jazz. So in a way, it was great because there was a bit of, even though it was toned down, the subtleness, the style, what we wore, how we wore it was what defined us. And it didn't really stand out too tough, as much as we stand out already due to the colour of our skin. So again, that's why I say it's not about fashion, it's about style, how you wear things. You can, 2, 3, 4 people can wear the same thing, but it's how you wear it which makes it different. And I think that's why I thought this is appropriate to be talked about Black British style. So let's fast forward into the 60s and 70s. These are now the first generation Black British children. They were the children of the Windrush. There's a lot of things going on. So my dad, my uncle, my mum, even though she was born, my mum was born here, but my mum, it was a time of movement. It was a time of revolution. It was a time of social change. It was a time of protest. It was a time of fighting back. It was a time of speaking up and being noticed. So for the Black community, this was about empowerment. This was about social political. This was about the shift, the social political shift. America at the time was fighting against the man and the status quo. The Rastas were fighting against Babylon. And for Black Brits, they were all one and the same. We were fighting against, you know, again, stop and search. There was, I think the Brixton, no, I'm not going to say it, but it could probably be it. It could be the Brixton riots. There was still a lot of legislation that was anti-immigration. So after Windrush, there was a bit of immigration. Basically, it was stopping us from coming over here. Crazy, isn't it? Crazy, right? But we started to find a voice. And this was demonstrated through our music as well as our fashion of that shift. It kind of started from inside out. It was first our mindset. We were sick and tired of being sick and tired of being treated like we're nothing. But again, I think again, because our parents or the children of the 60s and 70s, they were born here. So they're like, no, I'm not an immigrant. I was born here. I should have the same rights as you. What's going on in America? Civil rights movement, Martin Luther King. I should have the same rights as you. I am someone. You, as I said, we run things no run we. That's been in our DNA. So the change and the shift in our attitude and our expression started from inside out. Mindset, as I said, way of thinking, like I said, inspiration from across the pond, see what's going on, being fed up, and being sick and tired of being sick and tired, to our outward dress. So we started to you started to see the more Afrocentric fashions from our hair. So first, you know, it wasn't the curly perm, it wasn't the relaxer or the hot iron. Jesus, I don't know what that was like in the 40s. To more the afros, the shikis, the dreadlocks, to wearing the African print garbs, to wearing, you know, just being ourselves a lot more. We're releasing ourselves from the shackles of Western colonialisation. We start to don bright and bold prints. You know, or if you're part of the Black Panther movement, you had the word black, but you know what you made sure that you had? You saw that afro And wearing all black, your glasses, looking dapper, but again, that even though it might not have gone bright, but we're going to show up. But again, it's a bit like, again, as I said, this is theme. It's a bit like where we didn't take inspiration as such from British style in the 40s. We got it from America, from the blacks in America. So again, it seems to continue where we got our inspiration again from the Black Power movement. So again, we still held strongly to our black roots, but this is more obvious. It wasn't toned down. We thought, I ain't doing that. I'm not doing no tone down. And then you also had the rude boy style from Jamaica that swept with the further immigration of Jamaicans. And, and then when they banded together, it was the suits, it was the trilby hats and the pork pie hats. I don't know if you ever watched Desmond's pork pie, had a pork pie hat. And another thing which is quite interesting is that the rude boy look went on to inspire like white kids and their music, ska particularly. Again, you start to see that now we're showing up and showing out, that people are taking notice. This would have been probably Winston Churchill and Enoch Powell's worst nightmare, that not only are black people taking charge of who they are and being seen and standing up for themselves, but shit, even white people are looking at us going, oh, I like how they dress. We're not scruffy. We're not uncivilized. We know how to dress. You like our music, our quote unquote jungle music. We know now who is now sipping into polite white society. Oh my God, look up your daughters. Next thing you know, they're smoking weed. But you can now start to see how Black British style is starting to make its debut. And just to know, even on the other side of the pond, so even during in the 60s, so the 60s was the time of disco. So think about disco, and I think about the glam and I think about the brightness and the glam and the big hair and the big shoes and the boldness. Again, you can even see how there's Black influence on disco, and again, polite white society. Oh my God, disco, drugs, all about sex, being very, very close to each other. Oh, again, what to do. But, the white kids from the suburbs, they were going down to wherever, Studio 54. Over here, you had the northern white kids going to places like, I think they go to places go to like Northern Soul. They were going to parties where there were Black people, and that's when you had the start of a lot of more interracial activity. Despite, and again, they're probably like, oh my God, my daughter's with a black man. There wasn't really white guys with black girls at the time, but it was. You can see, to me, it was like the start of building of the influence, not just in terms of building up our own Black British identity, but also how it influenced British fashion and British style. And that sort of then goes into the 80s. So now we're in the 80s, my era. Oh, I wish, if anybody said to me, what era would you love to live in at this, I think probably if I was in my 20s, I would definitely say the 80s. Fashion, the style, the TV, and also I was born. So now we're in the 80s. And at this time, fashion is changing, but it's in a different, it's still, there's still the resonance of the 70s. So when I think about Black British style in the 80s, and I'm looking at pictures on Getty just to see how I can emulate this. I think this is the time of the birth of hip hop. Okay, I might be wrong, birth of the 70s, but this is when hip hop started to take off. So you think about hip hop, it's the tracksuit, it's the hoodies, it's the brands, it's the glasses, it's the trainers, it's the chain, it's the psychedelic shirts, it's obviously like the Run DMC Salt and Pepper. Shout out to Run again, because I know Run's your Salt and Pepper fan, and you probably looked like a Salt and Pepper backing dancer at that time. Shout out to Run. Anyway, we had the gold earrings, we had the hairstyle, all of that. But this time it was like a really nice melting pot. But again, I underline, it was still definitely, I would say, Black, Black British style. I think about, you had at the time, you had hip hop, but then also you had like, what is it? The New Romantics, you had pop. But again, what was supposed, but both, it doesn't matter what genre, the influence that you had on Black British culture was, we were now finally going, yeah, I don't maybe have to wear bright colours, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to wear glasses. I'm going to show hip hop. Hip hop is associated with Black culture. I'm going to show it through what I wear, because I see other people in America wearing something like that. So I'm going to start wearing that. And I think TV and media really did have a very heavy influence on that, because again, this was the start of MTV, so we saw more adverts, it was start consumerism, it was also the time of the yuppie culture, the heels, the shoulder pads, all that. Like if you watch something in Prime with Daniel, what is it? I want to say Daniel Cheadle. I probably got his name wrong. And it's called Black Friday. It's a comedy. Love it. Watch it. And that kind of gives you a bit of also an insight into black style. Because what happened was there started to be another creation of a subculture. So second generation now, they didn't want to wear what their parents wear. Like who does? Even though I still get influenced, but who wants to look like what their parents wear, right? So you had more, it was more going back to, say, the big hair, you know, because again, this girl, big hair, but curl, you know, curly, I'm sure we've started at that time, curly hair, bright, you know, maybe sometimes short, one-sided, you know, tight, white, bright, not tight, bright stuff. Something our parents wouldn't wear. But there was also sort of like, it was paying like homage to our parents, because you still had a lot more people wearing, you had more people wearing dreads still, maybe not so much afros, but definitely dreadlocks still. Because again, I think in America, if you watch things like my mum, like she used to love watching Dallas and Falcon's Crest and The Bold and the Beautiful. And you see like Joan Collins looking, so then there's another one as Alexis, Alexis a Diamond? I don't know. Anyway. And what they were, so you get the inspiration from that. So like our parents, hip hop and what we see on MTV inspired our fashion sense. And again, as I said, advertising, Nike and stuff like that. So, but when I also think about, you know, salt and, like when I think about Salt and Pepper, for example, Salt and Pepper, remember Pepper, she is of Jamaican descent. Now, when I look at what they were wearing a big earrings. And the thing, do you know that reminds me of? That reminded me of dancehall. Now, and so again, this is another thing that we're cutting into. Big earrings, bold, bright. We started to connect with our culture, our Caribbean culture, much more subtly through MTV. We started to do that. But also with the migration of Africans, this is back in the 70s, so sorry I'm going a bit, but also what I found with the migration of Africans into the UK particularly, they had a similar experience to the blacks that came in 48. They didn't want to do too much. They didn't want to, you know, stand out. But trust me, when they go to when they have weddings, when they have birthdays, when they go to church, they may listen. I love African style because you know what? They have a bag to match a shoe. Right? I have to start emulating that. Because I know my mum has a bag to match a shoe and she loves all that. I need to make sure I have a bag to match a shoe and that bright African print. They started to, it's not as having a dashiki. It was like, no, we don't have that. I'm coming with my wedding garb. I'm coming with what I wear to church. I'm coming with what I wear to a wedding. But again, we didn't do that in our workplace. We didn't come to that with our workplace. We didn't go into the store. Again, it was dimmed down. So again, their children were wearing what the Americans wear, because again, I think I remember I watched something a few years ago, and the African kids were talking about, oh no, like if I'm going to church, I'll always wear like a big jacket, so my friends at school won't see me in my African garbs. So it was like, again, the Caribbean kids who come over had been here, and they will laugh at that. And I'm thinking like, wow, we were so ignorant, but we were so still colonialized and still brainwashed. And it's like, why are you laughing at that? But yet you will feel okay to wear dashiki, you know, I'm like, oh, look, she wearing that. No, you know, it's so ignorant. But again, I have another story about African print in a minute. So anyway, before I digress, I haven't really too scripted, so I'm kind of going a bit of a tangent. But again, I think it's this, so in a way we had this subtle, it was a different sort of way of fitting in. It wasn't necessarily fitting in to British society. It was definitely fitting in with our friends. It was definitely fitting in accordance to our, who's celebrities, so, you know, hip hop icons and who they see on, you know, on Dallas. And that was a great way of consumerism. It's like, I see it on screen. I want to wear that because I see that. I want to wear those trainers, kind of like these Jordans. And it's still there now, but not so much. So then coming to the 90s. So this is now, I'm talking about, I'm now 10 in the 90s. Yeah, so I'm about 5. Beginning of 1990, I was 5. So I'm still growing up. So yeah, 5 to 15 at this time. And I don't think there was much of a shift in fashion as per se. But one thing I definitely stands out for me is this something which has been, according to, it was a quote, definitely a quote from a website or from a link about the Black called, is the audio called the Black Renaissance. The Black British Renaissance, sorry, which is about the tracing the legacy of Black British fashion with Andrew Ibby, Jazzy B, and Martin Rose. Please watch it. I'll try and see if I can share it on my Instagram or something. And it started talking about this Black Renaissance, which I can really absolutely agree with you. This is Black Renaissance, and this is now time of the supermodel, the Naomi Campbell. I'm not going to talk about Tyra Banks, but definitely Naomi Campbell for us, So at this time, yes, it was a renaissance, but I think, again, we were then going through another transition. But also at the same time, it was science is sort of another defragmented of how you want it to look. So you had the clubs, and what you could see at this time is we still want to stand out. And then also this, again, it's the Western influence on our hair, but again, that's definitely another time. But obviously you see like Naomi Campbell, you're like, oh my God, she's beautiful. But again, another thing about what you see, girls were wearing probably a weave was in, so people had probably weave down to their backside, probably wasn't great. Relaxers in their hair. There wasn't, I think at this time, dreads, people with dreads were Rastafarians were seen as a subculture, very anti-establishment. But by this time, the 80s kids were now in their the 80s kids. So if you're born in 80, so if I think my cousin, she was born in 1980, they're now 10, going through their teenage years, hitting 20 by, no, hold on, 80s, 99. Yeah, sorry, my maths is so bad. They are now 10. They're in the 90s, they're now 10 and up. Right, this is the time of going through your rite of passage. It's just, going through your teenage years, your definitive years, as they say. Now, before I really go into the 90s and I want to give you some historical context. So the 80s was a time of where we were just kind of really wanting to be seen. It was unity, as I said, unity and striving for justice continuously through continue for protests, and other subcultures and other demographics were fighting for our own, the gay community, the feminist movement had, but definitely the gay community, and other communities, other non-mainstream communities, as I would say. So in the 90s now in Britain, we fought enough. We have fought enough. Like, give us our flowers. We have put on the work. Let's see the fruits of our labour. And you can say, again, music related, that Choice FM began streaming on the radio, on airwaves. So it was the first time that we had a first 24-hour black music radio station. And I'm going to probably do a podcast about black British music, but Jesus Christ, that fashion's going to, it's going to take a long time. But anyway, I'm going to do that. So at the time, also, the UK 1991 UK census was the first to include any questions on ethnicity, and it showed that black Londoners numbered 500,000 people in the city of 7 million. And obviously for the country, we were 1.6 million. There was also the formation of the Association of Study of African Culture. So I think so they started obviously to do research about our black and Asian people in Britain. Unfortunately, it was also a time where we experienced the racial attack of Stephen Lawrence, which happened in 1993. And this is something which is still a really, really, really touchy subject, still poignant for us. But at that time, again, we still saw racism. We still saw lots, again, the stop and search. The fact that these guys got off, basically they weren't charged. And it was, you saw police corruption. But it affected black communities across the nation, because Stephen Lawrence could have been your brother could have been your nephew, could have been your son, could have been your friend, you know, could have been you. And it made us think like, nah, all this, nah, gossa. And we started to see, especially the fact that there was racism towards the police and the practice, we was like, no, we ain't still putting up that protest and that revolution and that urge for social change continued. But also at the same time, we had our first black British football captain for England's team, Paul Ince, who went on to captain the squad for 7 games. We then saw people on the TV. We saw Moira Stewart. Now, Moira Stewart became the first black Caribbean news reader to appear in black British television. She was named the best female television personality. Then we saw another unfortunate thing. End of 95, there was a riot that broke out after the death of Wayne Douglas in police custody. So again, it was just like ups and downs. We're making leaps and bounds in other ways, but at the same time, it's always been dragged down by knowing how, but despite all our achievements, despite being here, well, even though we've been here for like centuries, but despite getting our recognition, more of the time we're getting our recognition, it seemed like that racial tension was still existing. And they want us to say that despite all your leaps and bounds, congratulations, you know, but still just want to let you know that we still don't think highly of you. Don't think that because you're making those leaps and bounds that we care. We don't give a fuck. You know, and it showed. But again, what we didn't do, we didn't just go quietly into the night. We made sure we fought. There had been 100 demonstrators that with British and riots, there was 100 demonstrators. It lasted for 5 hours. There was arrests. Police said they got hurt, but I'm like, well, mate, you killed him, so you getting a broken leg and him actually dying, you can't compare the two. But another thing in music, particularly music at this time as well, and this is where we have our own, where this British culture is starting to be independent of the influences of the US, is through UK jungle scene. You know, and this is so the UK jungle scene, it started about in 95. It started to pick up momentum. You started to have some underground bangers, but you also had Soul to Soul. I love Soul to Soul. I still love Soul to Soul now. And you see Soul to Soul, and what I love about Soul to Soul, first at a time where, as it was quoted, it's like a black renaissance, because at first at the time where like dreadlocks was all Rasta, nah. It was more about, again, going back to this Afro centricity and, you know, paying homage to our motherland, not our hope, not the Her Majesty's motherland, our motherland, Africa. And we saw, you know, Ben with Jazzy B and the dreads, and I keep forgetting the name of the woman. I'm so bad. Let me find that. And then you saw even all of them. I think all of them used to wear dreads. Let me just have look. So you had dreads, and then I remember even Jazzy used to have the t-shirt. So he came out with a brand. He had a brand. You understand what I'm saying? But it was definitely, it was influenced by reggae. You know, remember Back to Life? I love that song, Back to Life. And it started in the clubs in the 80s, and then obviously it started to bring more in like the 90s. So it started to become mainstream. But I remember, and also again, this is the time of the music video. So I remember the song, and they used to wear all the, like, they had the dreads, and I was loving it, and I'm thinking, hey, yeah, this is cool. And I love, and, you know, and that's all like, you know, Karen Wheeler, Karen Wheeler, with the dreads, and Jazzy B with the dreads, and then you had, he had this, there's the fashion. as well. So he used this, which I really love, that he used this opportunity to diversify into, into fashion. So, and again, he had his influence in Rastafari and Jarica, so that's probably where, again, and the sound system. So the sound system, again, so again, let's talk about sound system. The sound system is a big thing for us in our in the Caribbean community, especially in Jamaica. Sound system is common, every day, and they bought the sound system influences over here. And I think what Soul to Soul did for me, anyway, is especially dreadlocks. Like, dreadlocks started to become seen in a different light. It starts to become seen definitely in a different light. It wasn't seen as, oh, dreads, oh, because if you think about people like, who had dreads at that time? So, like, if I see, I don't want to say Milli Vanilli, but I think Tracy Chapman was wearing dreads. I saw, I think more people in America were wearing dreads. So, like, in the 90s. So it wasn't, again, you saw, like, people didn't, it's more now. But I will definitely say, like, Jazzy B, as I said, Karen Wheeler, Tracy Chapman, Terence D'Arby, that's it. Sorry, that's who I was waiting for. Then they had the dreads. And I think even, like, what is it, Criss Cross? They didn't really have dreads as such, but but it looked kind of similar. Yeah, so they start, and again, even in the hip hop fashion, you see them wearing braids in hip hop. So again, it's more Afrocentric, and yeah, so with dreadlocks. So you can see what was going on. Even I'm doing research now. Even Lil Wayne in the late 90s was having dreadlocks. So you can see that it was starting to become a good thing. And I think, again, it's because of the fact that it was in the media. But anyway, I digress. I digress. So we're now at a point where we still want to be known. But I said our influence and our blackness was definitely starting to become part of the Black British experience. There was still a lot of racial incidents happening. But I think now that the reason why it happened in the 90s is because we weren't taking no shit. We weren't taking no shit. We weren't taking nothing. We wanted to show who we are. So, like, even as 1998, there was an artist called Chris O'Philly. Shout out to We Are in CS for this research on the 90s. Thank you so much, because I'm using this as a source. And also, like, you saw, so Chris Philly, he was in the Art World 98, he was the first black artist and the first painter since 1985 to be awarded for a Turner Prize. And we also even had sports. Listen, Linford Christie was mashing it up in sports. I mean, I don't care what anybody says. Linford Christie, it was about Colin Jackson, it was about Tessa Sanders, it was about, who else did we have in the 90s? I don't remember. But these three that were mashing it up in Black Britain, we were mashing it up. And so I was like, nah, this is our time now. And what was the coup de grace was also UK garage scene, which I want to talk about in the 90s. So again, going back to the 90s now, going back to the UK, this whole UK garage. So how UK jungle. And you remember, I don't know if anybody remembers this, I remember in the UK jungle, there was this album, UK jungle hits. And because, again, jungle music is inspired by reggae. They use a reggae dub and then they speed it up and then it's another different sound. It's more urban. And if you go to a lot of the jungle raves, like, again, I wasn't going to jungle rave because I was too young. But it was also influenced by dancehall. Again, bright, white, string vests. The girls are, the big earrings. So again, we were starting to see more of a shift. So if I looked at, like, the jungle scene, right, in the 90s, and yes, I'm typing if you can hear this, and I look at what they used to wear, again, it was a vibrant subculture. because it was inspired, emerged from the UK rave scene and Jamaican sound culture. So again, it was this merge, this merge of two cultures, EDM and Jamaican sound system culture. And it was also influenced by hip hop and by funk. So when you think about what they used to wear in reggae, what they wear in hip hop, it was the bright clothes. It was, the Machino, like, was it Machino really? No, Machino was, I would say Machino was more like coming up into 90s and stuff. But again, I was 10. But what I liked is, again, had that hip hop. We were starting to come into our own. We were wearing some people wearing dreads. The girls were bright. But again, with the hair, it wasn't Afro. It wasn't really Afro, but I'd say the box braid. But I think the box braids were more with the 90s in America with things like poetic justice. But our hair, still had that sort of the weave where we had our hair up. But we were bright. We made sure we were bright. We had t-shirts, hoodies, caps, big thing, and then we still started to have our own. It wasn't so much an American, but it was definitely distinct. Because again, even jungle didn't really take off in America. I think it's only been in the last 5 years that it's like they kind of really like drill music is similar, and with Loverboy, working with that. But so I think, again, jungle is still definitely a UK thing. And like in the 80s, you saw the white boys and the white girls coming to jungle raves, and it's just that vibrant. That was us. That was, to me, was the epicenter of Black British music culture in the UK. It was different to techno, but it was a bit too fast. It was definitely different to techno. So we weren't like right out there. But we made sure we showed up. And also, even like at the time, hip hop. Again, going back to hip hop. You know what I think about? I think about Little Kim. Listen, Little Kim was an American dancehall queen in hip hop, because again, she made it acceptable for us to be okay with who we are, especially as females. But again, it wasn't braids and stuff. But she made it very acceptable for us to wear what we want to wear as women. Bright, probably half naked, blonde hair, but she was ballsy. And again, back to our culture, we are bright, and she showed up and showed who she was and who we are and what we wanted to say. And I think in fashion in the 90s, you had like Naf Naf, it was feelers. It was okay to start to wear bright clothes, and more. There was this height of there was more increase in urban wear, and it wasn't so much of as a subculture, but it was starting to seep into, to start to merge with mainstream, with fashion. Fashion was starting to look at what we're wearing. So places like Tommy Hilfiger, you had Fubu, you had Baby Fat at the time. Yeah, Baby Fat. They were starting to look at, mainstream was starting to look at who we are. So like the things about Gucci and I don't know, yeah, Gucci, Prada, they started to look to us for inspiration, but we also bought in. And again, I'm not that, and to be fairly honest, I think they used that as a ploy to make us, we buy their stuff, but yet they didn't want us to buy their stuff at the same time. Like, listen, like, I'll get them to buy it, but don't tell us, don't put it out too much, because also we now had money. Again, the kids from the 80s, in the 90s, were now 80s to 90s, 90s to 2000s. They were now coming of an age. They are now halfway between 15, 16, 17, 18, 16 to get a job, 21, you're an adult. So they're starting to be on their own. And they were 50. And the thing is, well, again, I know I'm probably gasbagging, but also what I think is, even though, and goes phrase, even though we may not have much money, we made sure it looked good. We made sure we looked good. And it was acceptable to be more urban. It was acceptable to wear urban stuff. So if you say like even men's fashion in the 90s, so like Tupac, and you saw Boyz II Men, you saw Nas, it was acceptable now. Yes, it was still a subculture, but this was acceptable in all different genres. You had glam rock, then you had rock, then you had 80s, you had disco. It was in all these different genres. It started to really seep in to this. I personally feel our fashion started to inspire other genres to do. So now we're going into the 2000s, the millennium, the new millennium. And again, according to the We Are NCS, what was going on was that there was other things that were going on. Unfortunately, it started off quite sudden. There was the murder of Dan Maloney Taylor, which happened. But on the upswing in 2002, Paul Boateng made history. He was the first Black cabinet minister. So now we're not just making waves in fashion and media. We're starting to make waves in politics where it all happens. But then if you go into music, this was the time of garage and grime. So we saw artists like Roll Deep, Pay As You Go, Wiley, Dizzy Rascal, Skepta, Miss Dynamite. This is where you started to see this transition where we were winning. Now we're winning awards. We're now winning, Mercury prizes. We're now winning Album of the Year. We're now doing all of that. And also, as a side note, we had our first Black Archbishop of Canterbury. But again, what we also found is that even in schools, there was this, there was still a lack of diversity at this time. There was an inflexibility of our curriculum. But we started to have this talk about inclusion. So you even had like the British American who decided in 2007 that he wanted to talk about being gay. So again, it's about standing out and being noticed. And then of course we had 2008. We had our first, well, not my first, but we had a first Black American, the first Black president. And that started to make us think, boy, will there ever be a Black British Prime Minister? I'm still asking that question. But again, going back to, to garage. So again, I'm always trying to sort of fill some of this in now with music, because music, with our culture, music is a part of, music and fashion go hand in hand. Yeah, and we'll talk about that. And we see that, we still see that now. So there was now changing. So there was this change in our style with garage music. And there was these three types. It was Moschino, Versace, and Iceberg. That was the holy trinity. And again, thinking about my personal experience, I remember a really, really old family friend, shout out to you. And boy, this boy knew how to dress. He always had Moschino shirts, then the Moschino trousers, that was Versace shoes, the Iceberg jumpers. He was still wearing, Nike, still wearing a lot of the hip hop inspired stuff. But now we were coming into our own. We were definitely starting to come into our own. We were wearing designers because, again, even though some people were, we were still buying it, we made sure we had our money. This is the time where we were adults. We didn't care. We were wearing designer labels. But again, as I said, I think what was happening is that the mainstream fashion, so like the Moschinos, the Versaces, and stuff, he would definitely wouldn't dare want us to wear their stuff. They were high fashion, but we were like, high fashion, yeah, we can still do high fashion and still pop it and still be stylish. And so again, as I said before, people can wear the same clothes, but due to style, people wear it differently. So how you may not see the Versace and Moschino print on the runway, but we brought the runway to the ends. And what you saw like the girls dressing up. So the girls were dressing up when going to Morgan, shout out to the Morgan girls, going to Morgan, and they weren't really going to like Tammy Girl. I was too young, so I had to go to my Tammy Girl. Like I was at the time of 2000, so I'm 80 born. I was 10, I was to 90s, up in like, I was in my 20s at that time. And, coming into my 20s, so I was in my own fashion. But I wasn't, but again, sorry, but even though I scout raving, but I saw how the difference was. I saw the difference, and they were made sure they came out. So again, like how our grandparents were, they made sure when they went out, they stepped out. They stood out and they stepped out. But now we didn't have to step out. You just saw us. We just stood out. And it's also because we now had our own sense of empowerment, our own sense of identity. We also had more financial freedom that we didn't have to make do. We made it happen. We had cash. We want to go out and show up and show out, because again, if you see like again back to the music videos, and you can see what they're wearing in the music videos, and the garage girls, and they're looking desirable and they're looking good. They've got their heels on, they've got their little matching designer bag, which with no money in it, probably had the pedal pushers. Remember the pedal pushers, and you had your Morgan vests, and you thought, because again, I brought up and I saw that, but it was definitely something that was city based, because UK garage was definitely something that was born out of London, if I'm honest. We didn't do the beige, we dressed up again like our grandparents when they would do their 9 to 5, and they on the weekends they can be themselves, and we did the same thing, and we saved our money to get that stuff, but we made sure we looked good. We looked the good. Like I was looking at some pictures on digital, and then seeing of like this is Colosseum, and like who is it, Mighty Mo, and he's wearing a leopard skin tracksuit, and I see like other guys, they're wearing Avex jackets. My brother, God rest his soul, he loved his Avex jacket, and it was just our time. We weren't judged. Probably some of my parents were like, are you going out wearing that? Are you gonna be cool? But again, these are our peer group, and we want to be comfortable, but we're going out. We weren't going to be going there in no trainers, because again, in clubs as well, it's like no jeans, no trainers. So you had to go into a club and you had to look stylish, you had to look presentable. So again, as I said, the shoes, it wasn't like wearing no kickers and no wallabies. It was wearing Versace, and now I'm trying to remember what shop everybody used to go to get their designer stuff. There's a shop, and I can picture the bag, and I see if someone can know this, please shout me out. It used to be a blue bag, and it was very fancy. It wasn't paper, it weren't plastic. Oh no. It was that bag that that you could tell it was expensive, whatever you got in it. That's where people used to buy all their Moschino and their Iceberg and their Versace. It was before Z & Co. I'm gonna look it up, and I'm gonna find, and I'm gonna probably post it on my TikTok. But again, this continuous understanding of we wanted to look good. We still wanted to look good and stylish in our own way. At this time, this is a Black British identity. It wasn't an immigrant story. It was a Black British story. It was I was coming into my own. I could see what people wear. But mind you, when I was younger, I was a tomboy. So yeah, I was a tomboy, and to be honest, I'm being quite personal, I wasn't really comfortable in my own skin. I see what people would wear, like, oh, it's really nice, but I wasn't going out to raves like that. Well, I was. The lie, but I wasn't going to these big raves, So at this time, it's my cousin, my sister, they were going to raves like that. I wasn't, because I was too young. But anyway, I did go to some raves at 14. But anyway, we digress. We digress. But we wanted to be luxury. But again, as I said, I think the point is that the UK garage scene did bring the touch of class to urban. We bought the catwalk to the ends. jungle's still around. Jungle's still around, but it was different. It was just, they were two different, garage was more, you didn't dance like you done. You weren't getting all that sweaty. You're like, no, I'm not getting sweaty like that. We go to garage where you wear trainers. You don't need to wear trainers. You wear heels when you go to a garage, a jungle rave. You wouldn't want to wear like heels because now your foot's going to be bunning you probably like on 5 minutes. But in a garage rave, it was a bit more opulence. It was a bit more coming out, you're stepping out, you're doing whatever. And as I said, you see it. So where are we at now? Where are we at now? I would say coming up to 20. So now we're moving to say like 2010. So what I can see though, there's new designers, which I've posted about on my TikTok. There are new designers and there's Black British designers who are now becoming part of mainstream. And this is probably now the peak. This is the mountaintop now. This is the mountaintop. First, we were told, no, don't stand out. Then we were like, no, we're going to start standing out, seen as this hidden subculture. But at the same time, our influences started slowly started to grow, and the roots were starting to take set. The 80s, again, we're still having that transition, and it was sort of this shift between Western and TV and media influences, but still keeping it urban because of the influences of hip hop and other things. As I said, we now in 90s, we're now coming in independently in our own state as Black British style goes, with the influence of jungle music, and then obviously at the end of 2000 and the beginning of 2000 with garage music. So we're now in our 20, obviously now in our, so what, 90s to 2000s, this is our 10th year of seeing a very distinct look for us. So to 2010, let's say we're at in 2010. So what's going on in 2010? So again, according to the NCS, shout out to NCS, we were making more waves now. We're becoming, this was now second installment of the 20s. We had the 2012 Summer Gold Olympics in London, and there were some amazing athletes, and we won, and we got 29 total. 5 were won by Black British athletes. We had Jessica Ennis, Mo Farah, Nicola Adams, and Angie Joshua. And again, if you haven't, please go and check out my previous episode about Black British athletes. Please do. We finally kind of saw some justice done for Stephen Lawrence. So again, this is now 19 years, and we started to see it a term. This is now where his case is still open, and in 2012, the I'm not even going to say humans or people, because they're not the mammals that took his life, were found guilty to were sentenced to the equivalent of life sentence for an adult, with minimum of 15 years and 2 months and 14 years and 3 months for the other. But there was still some stuff that needs to go on because it had something to the police. But we can now see that justice is finally happening. We were starting to also take place in the creative scene. So Murray Blackwell was, she was the winning author, Naught's Heart, Paperboy, Hard Knife Edge. She made history by becoming the first Black British children's laureate in 2013. And then in the same year, you had Lewis Hamilton, my boy. And the reason I call him my boy is because he's Grenadian, he's half Grenadian like me, so shout out. Hope he's listening to my podcast. And you can see he has such a successful career. You can see getting some of the breakthrough in being in quote unquote white spaces at that time. He was doing it. Then you had Stormzy in Park and South London, XTC Function Alone. He had Shut Up, which blew up the internet, got into the top 40s at number 18. He was having a number one Christmas song on number one. Then we had, this is how now when Black culture meets high-end fashion, where Edward Enninful in 2017 became the Vogue's first male and black editor. He was the youngest fashion designer at ID magazine. He was 18. He made waves. And the way I see that is it's like, oh, so now you see us, and now this is opportunity for us to be seen in places that we have never really been seen or taken place. Don't get me wrong. Do not get me wrong. Campbell's still doing her thing, you know. Naomi Campbell was still doing her thing. Was still doing her thing. And then finally, but even though I don't know how much of an achievement it is, but anyway, you saw Prince Harry marry Meghan Markle, a mixed race lady. Now, some people say she was the first person with a mixed ethnic background to be part of the royal family. That actually is not true. And again, I've done a post on TikTok, and I'm going to probably do a episode about it later on to talk about black people in the royal family, which goes way back. And also it sort of now came to part again. It's like a now full circle with where there was, you know, people, they started to talk about Windrush. So at the time, 2018, sadly, there's a lot of people that came over from 1948 and 1971, where 500 million people came from the Caribbean to the UK, and they were told, oh, you know, when you come in, you don't need documents, or didn't need or given documents upon entry. But then in 71, there was an act that says that anybody with a British passport born overseas could settle in the UK with a work permit and proof of parent or grandparent born in the UK. So this is ended with immigration. So ended the Immigration Act meant that. So in 1971, the Immigration Act meant that a British passport holder born overseas could only settle in the UK with both a work permit and proof of a parent or grandparent being born in the UK. So if you didn't think about it, there was a lot of people, so the second to the first generation of Rush children, so again, my dad's era, they were told that they didn't have any paperwork. Some of them, their parents were told they didn't have any paperwork, and that they were living in the country and legally being detained. And then there was court cases. So it was like this, it was like, we'll come in full circle, but it was like a kick in the freaking teeth. It was a kick in the bloody teeth. And I don't even want to talk about it. It's so upsetting. There was inquiries in 2018. There was a scheme set up. But you can imagine, again, going back to our grandparents would come over here and wanted the, future. But then we'll tell, no, you don't need this, that, never. Then flipping decades later, they were told, oh, actually you did and you're legal, and we're going to try to deport you and we're going to deny you legal rights, even though we were told that it didn't need documents, didn't know that. But then now they changed law in 1971, and then only 71, and then in 2018, I don't need to do math, but a long ass time, they were then told that they were legal. How come they didn't do that before? How come they didn't do it in 1971? How come they didn't say, oh, we made a mistake? It just shows that they were just, I personally feel, and this is my own opinion, that they were biding their time. They was like, yeah, I'm just giving you your flowers, but let me just really cut you down because I'm the petty. And it shows that I think they thought, okay, so what Stephen Lawrence is getting their justice, now let me put you in your place. And I think that, again, it's another way of the establishment trying to put us down. But, I digress. But I think what was really poignant is, we had, David Lammy talking about justice. We had Bernardine Evaristo become the first Black British winner of Booker Prize of that novel Gone Other Woman. We had so many achievements, again, underlined by what's going on. And then what the poignant part is 2019, we saw Stormzy Makin being the first Black British artist to headline Glastonbury. We saw also the introduction of the Black curriculum. So again, there's an uproar because, again, Black Lives Matter, we wanted to make sure these things happen, and we were seeing what's going on. And again, we are outspoken. Normally we are outspoken people anyway. We're not backwards about coming forward. But especially as we have our own identity that isn't linked, that is, yes, it's linked to our grandparents' immigration journey, but it's our own. We were born here. We were born here. We grew up here. We've got rights like everybody else. And we've seen that happen all over the place where people are speaking up and speaking out, and they're using their voice, and they're getting justice, and they're starting to be seen, and they're starting to be heard, and they're starting to use things. And we see people like us in politics, and we see people, presidents, we've seen all these things. We've seen what we're doing. Our music is now being identified. Our music is now in the mainstream as well as us, as well as. So what we now see 2010 is we see this really nice mashup of streetwear, urban wear, but contemporary tailoring, but also the embracing of our natural hair. So think about streetwear. So think about streetwear, yeah, because again you have the younger generation. So in 2010, I'm now here, so 2010, so I'm now in my 30s at this time, and then I see the people that are younger than me, especially, and I see London influence. So these guys are now in their 20s. This is their streetwear. This is what they wear. They probably get obviously inspiration from hip hop. So if I could again think about Stormzy, and I think about Skepta. So Skepta's now gone into fashion. Skepta's now on the fashion runway. I love that. Shout out to Skepta for doing that. And you can see that. And to me, that is again the personification of reaching that mountaintop in terms of fashion, in terms of our fashion. You also now see more Black creatives, designers, models, putting our style out there to be shown. You also have designers working for luxury houses like Balmain and Louis Vuitton. So you had that designer Oliver Rustin and Virgil Abloh to be in these spaces. And then obviously what's been nice is that Virgil Abloh then went on to make Off-White. So this is now high-end fashion runway meets urban. We're saying we are now there. This is what you want to emulate. This is what you want to look like. And again, I don't know if you see on my TikTok, there is a picture that I put of someone wearing a string vest, and you see how the string vest is kind of taking this transition. That is another way of doing it. So again, there's still the subculture, but it's more a subculture that is it's not high. The subculture is now probably still not high end, but it's like a subculture within the culture. Because we're still wearing, like me now, I'm not wearing the pink lingerie stuff and crazy stuff now, but I'm wearing more demure stuff, but I'm making sure I've got my natural hair. Not gone with the weaves. More women are wearing the hair natural. They're wearing more afro. They're wearing more braids. It's more toned down. In terms of designers, yeah, we're still kind of doing that, but what I see, which is great, is I see there's other fashion designers which I've spoken about, especially in urban, because if you see again, there's still a lot of grime artists, and I say Stormzy, Skepta, Boy Better Know, all that stuff. I mean, Boy Better Know's a bit further, but people in like Dave, you've got a lot of people now who are making it possible for us to wear, to urban, to still be urban, but we're just like, it's now again, a lot of people want to be urban. Urban is not just a black or white thing. Urban is like is a style. It's not even urban anymore. It's called streetwear. So there's a lot of streetwear designers now. So the few that I would talk about. So again, what I'd love to see was there was this guy called Fully Paid. So there's a designer called Fully Paid, and what I really like is his brand was used in, or style or design, sorry, clothing was used in Netflix, where Top Boy. And this is now where we are now, not just MTV, we are Netflix, we are global. We are global, and we are now now we are exporting our own design. Yes, it's influenced by, but it's a streetwear. If I think about when I was growing up, and I think about my cousin Elvin, God rest his soul, and we used to wear tracksuits, trainers. He always used to wear Reebok. He always used to wear Reebok Was it Reebok workouts? Yeah, he used to wear his Reebok workouts. But he also used to make sure he had like tracksuits. And I don't want to bring it down there, but even when he passed, we made sure, but he wore a tracksuit when he passed. Oh God, yeah, he wore a tracksuit when he passed. That was who he was, and that's beautiful. That we need to show till when we from birth to now, we need to show who we are. We need to show who we are and not be ashamed of who we are. And this is what I love that was happening now. We are now not ashamed. We're now reached a point in our history, in our timeline, that we're now not ashamed to be who we are. We're still doing drugs, even like Trapstar and Hoodrich. They're now blown up. But then I also see another side of Black British fashion, which isn't just about. It's definitely very inspired by the garage scene, where it's still, subtle, stylish, clean cut. It kind of sometimes it just sort of pays homage to our grandparents in terms of how we look, but the aesthetics, but it's definitely very much our own. It's not this sort of colonialized copy. And again, as I said, if I was to see someone wearing the same shirt, black, white person, Indian person, whatever, or the same suit, I'd say a black person or a white person will probably just wear it different. It just hang different. They might wear like a black guy might wear like little chaps with it. Now, if you don't know what chaps is, that is a gold chain or gold. Yeah, it's a gold necklace, but you get it as a gold chain or as a gold bracelet. And chaps, to me, if I think about chaps, I think about the chaps where like when we're from the Jamaica, again, the dance hall thing in Jamaica, like we would just wear it differently. We'll just wear it differently with our chaps and our one earring. We will wear it, you'd see the subtleness that will make us stand out from our own. That's just who we are. So, yeah, I need to sort of start wrapping up because it's been like an hour now. But what I really want to say is, regardless of, you can see how it's changed over time. This has been great research for me to do. And I would say that style, again, as Gore Vidal said, style is about making people know who you are and what you want to say and not giving a damn. And I would say that in the 80s, in the 70s, in the 40s, it was like, we are immigrants coming to Britain and we want to come here to the Queen's epicenter of the British Empire, to the 60s and 70s, to say, I know who I am. I am a black person in this community, in the thing, and I want to see change, and I want you to know who I am. And enough is enough. The 80s were like, I'm here. I'm still here. I know who I am. You see what I'm wearing? I don't care. I'm still hyped for who we are. I'm still here. I ain't going nowhere. The 90s was, do you know what? I'm still here now, and I'm still going to be here. And now you're going to really see who I am, because I'm going to do some of the things that we suppressed, the dreads and on an Afrocentricity. I am here. You see me on the TV. You see me in the news. You see me making waves. You see me in the House of Commons. You see me everywhere. And again, I ain't going nowhere. And I'm really now going to shed who I am and my skin. And I'm going to make sure you also understand that dreads, which you might have thought were a bit, not neat and tidy. I'm going to make sure you can see my dreads and how beautiful they are and how amazing they are. And I want the whole world to see. Come on, again, less of the Western. Again, it's like that. I think it's again that Western colonial crown that we needed to really start to shake. In 2000s was like, I am a black British person. I'm in your data. I'm on the news. I'm on the catwalk. I am a designer. I'm in more spaces than you ever know. And now you want to definitely emulate me, and now I'm going to say, here you go, I'm going to give you what I am, because again, it's about never giving a damn. I'm now going to show you what I know, how I wear it, and hey, take it or leave it. And then also then people then taking note and say, I see that people liking what they do, and it's really much a part of who we are. And you know, our black music, whilst there's going to be black music, there's going to be black fashion. And now that black music is starting to is part of our mainstream, so is our fashion. We brought that with us. So we're now there. And then you see Stormzy on the main stage, that's so see it there. You see Skepta on the catwalk, see it there. We're here. We are here. And our style will always be here. And I think it's just what's next. We're going to keep growing. We're going to still keep doing what we do. We're going to still keep wearing what we wear. Now, there's been these things at this moment with this whole Crown Act where they're trying to suppress or trying to, stop children from wearing their braids in school and all that shit and afro. So, nah, that's another way we're trying to, again, suppress who we are. Yeah, back in the 70s, you could do that. Back in the 60s, you can do that. It ain't going to swing today. It's definitely not going to swing today. And because there is money and because there are more financial freedoms, with those financial means, those financial freedoms, we can express who we are a lot more. And again, as I said, our grandparents say where it was you had to make do and you had to do what you can. Yes, we can. Seriously, we can do a lot with very little. So it doesn't matter if you have money or not. It's fashion. With fashion, money buys you fashion. Money buys you clothes. Money can't buy you style. You can be as broke as a joke and still be stylish. Shit, look at how fashionable now sliders with socks are. Even that's not my thing sometimes. But sliders with socks, it was like nobody was able to fit. But look how people wear that. Or bonnets. Now I hate wearing bonnets out in public, but again, our headscarf is who we are, it's our culture. So yeah, again, oh god, that was a lot. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you've enjoyed. If you haven't already, check out my TikTok, check them out on Instagram, follow me on Spotify, I'm on Apple. Share a like, and I will see you soon. I apologize for leaving it so long from the last episode, but life gets in the way, and I wanted to make sure that I was in the right space of mind to record this, because this is very, very passionate. This is very important to me. So sorry about that. I will try not to leave it too late. I'm going to probably tune into episode every 2 weeks. This is a bit more manageable than every week. Gives me time to to research more. And I hope you enjoy this and have a blessed weekend.